Chapter 41 The White Devil emerged from the nuclear explosion. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Reversal skill XP +1. Congrats. Reversal skill leveled up. Reversal skill LV2, 107/300 channels negative spell energy into positive energy for potent healing. Spell reversal he XP +1. Congrats. Spell reversal he leveled up. Spell reversal he LV3, 19/1000 generates a repulsive force centered on he. Minimum power is twice that of Cang, with a max output of positive infinity, like a mini supernova. That intense battle just boosted both reversal skill and spell reversal he by one level. Since the technique has no lower limit and previous enemies barely scratched Sumu, reversal skill was lagging, but facing the destroyer armor, he needed to constantly heal damage from the energy beams, so reversal skill, which had been stockpiling XP, finally leveled up, putting level 3 within reach. Level 2 reversal skill's healing is noticeably better, and injuries recover much faster. The combined healing speed from reversal skill and energy absorption is now Wolverine level. Still can't use reversal skill on others, though. Maybe at level 3, thinking about this, Sumu decided to practice reversal spell more. He'd needed to extract the reality stone when Jane Foster dropped off the food, plus, Sumu was curious about higher level reversal spell effects. The pinnacle of reversal spell in Jiu-Jitsu is mastering it to heal others. What abilities would he unlock surpassing even Shoko Yeri? Immortality? Raising the dead? Restoring matter to its original state? Or something even wilder? As for spell reversal its power got another buff. He turned his palm upward, channeling the spell, and a black and red singularity about the size of a basketball floated steadily above his hand. He hurled the singularity. Violent winds kicked up, the ground trembled, and another 10-meter wide gash appeared in the middle of the already massive trench. Spell reversal he just got several times stronger. Sumu grinned, looking at the destruction he'd wrought. Besides the skill upgrades, there were other perks. The destroyer armor's lasers were packed with energy. Absorbing it gave Sumu a ton of energy points. He dumped all those points into his character template, boosting fusion from 60% to 67%. If the destroyer armor wasn't so unwieldy and didn't risk Odin's wrath, Sumu would use it as an endless energy battery. Even with level 4 energy absorption, the arc reactor wasn't obsolete. Sumu calculated he'd need about 5 arc reactors running simultaneously to keep up with his daily needs. Looks like snagging those infinity stones needs to be a priority. Just as Sumu turned to leave, a deafening roar echoed in the distance. The sound made Sumu freeze, but Lu Yen snapped him back to his senses. His face, which had been calm, lit up. His earlier efforts were finally paying off. A giant missile plummeted from the sky. Sumu stood still. Just a nuke, no biggie. The benefactors were sending more energy. Instantly, a blinding light erupted, like a miniature sun, engulfing everything. In a distant town, Thor and the others watched a mushroom cloud bloom in the distance, a shockwave barreling toward them. At the last second, Thor regained his powers, summoned Mjolnir, and whisked Jane Foster and the other mortals to safety. The warriors 3 followed, and once in the clear, they stared at the scene in disbelief. Even Thor was stunned by the power of humanity's deadliest weapon. Why was Sumu attacked with something so devastating? Jane Foster explained, Sumu's public persona is the White Devil. He's wanted by the government. I heard they were planning something against him. This nuke must be their doing. Being hit by a nuke like that, not even Sumu could survive. Sol stood up and announced, I'm going to save him. Even if Sumu is dead, I will retrieve his body. But Thor stopped mid-stride, staring at the shrinking inferno. He spoke slowly, actually, I don't think I need to intervene. Back at the military base, generals watched the Gobi through satellite surveillance. Seeing the White Devil vaporized by the nuke, they cheered. Located in the center of the nuclear explosion, even the White Devil cannot survive. The world's greatest threat has finally been eliminated, and the White Devil will become history. Contact the media. We need to announce the White Devil's death. Let everyone know the military took him down, that while everyone celebrated, Colonel Stryker kept his eyes locked on the mushroom cloud. Having dealt with mutants for years, with his own son being one, he understood them well. He knew mutants weren't necessarily restricted to specific powers. A powerhouse like the White Devil surviving a nuke wouldn't surprise him at all. Suddenly, the mushroom cloud shifted. The outward expanding flames and shockwave visibly contracted. A huge amount of light and heat seemed to be sucked into a black hole, unable to escape. The other generals saw it too. Their smiles vanished as they stared in shock. What's happening? The nuclear explosion's energy is being absorbed by something in the blast zone. Isn't his mutant ability suppressed by our tech? How can he still do that? Oh, God, is he even human? That within moments, all the nuclear energy was gone. Only a massive cloud of dust and smoke remained in the explosion area. Even the molten ground had cooled. Then, a blurry figure emerged from ground zero, walked into the clear view of the satellite, looked up, and flipped off the sky. Chapter 42 Sentinel Robot. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Seeing this, silence fell over the generals. Their worst fear had come true. The white-haired freak had powered up enough to withstand a nuke in practically no time. Now what? What could possibly hurt him? One of the generals spoke up, addressing Colonel Stryker. Stryker, why isn't the mutant dampener working on him? That the others realized the same thing. If the dampener was doing its job, the white-haired guy would just be a regular person, unable to survive the explosion. The fact that he was still using his powers meant the device wasn't having any effect. All eyes turned to Stryker, filled with questions. After a moment of uncomfortable silence, Stryker explained, this dampener uses sound waves. If the sound is blocked, it weakens the effect significantly. We believe he found a way to become immune. But don't worry, he continued, we have a backup. A dampener specifically designed for him, using his unique profile. It's dozens of times more powerful than the standard model, and it uses electromagnetic waves, which are nearly impossible to block. The range is limited, so we didn't deploy it right away. But I've equipped every Sentinel robot with one. They're also programmed with the spatial attack abilities we've seen him use. They will take him down. Hearing this, the generals looked at Stryker with renewed admiration, their confidence returning. Meanwhile, Sumu walked out of the nuclear blast zone, belching. He'd absorbed almost all of the bomb's energy, pushing him to his limit. If he couldn't continuously convert that energy into points for his character templates, he'd never have contained it. Even now, he felt ready to explode, desperate to release the power inside. Using his enhanced vision, he spotted dozens of strange-looking robots approaching. Finally, a target for all this pent-up energy. He recognized them instantly, Sentinel robots, designed to eliminate mutants. These machines could detect mutant abilities and instantly adapt, mimicking those powers for targeted attacks. However, these Sentinels were probably an earlier model, not capable of fully replicating the X gene and accessing a wide range of powers. He guessed they could only handle a couple of abilities at once, including his own spatial attack. I used to be able to break through their spatial attack star. Wonder if I still can with the level 3 unlimited spell. Back at the military base, surveillance satellites transmitted images of the Gobi Desert. The generals and Stryker watched nervously. If this failed, they'd be out of options. Then, they saw it, the white-haired guy was on the move. Instead of running, he was charging straight at the robots. This sparked excitement. Their biggest fear was that he'd escape or attack from a distance. The dampener and spatial attacks only worked up close. If he ran or hid, the Sentinels were useless. As soon as he was within range, Stryker barked the order, activate the white-haired demon suppression device. At the same moment, Sumu heard an electric hum from the approaching robots and felt a brief stagnation in his energy flow, which quickly returned. He knew it was the dampener, but it had no lasting effect on him. Using the Cang spell, he connected to distant space with a massive gravitational force, instantly covering 100 meters and appearing in front of a Sentinel. Placing his hand on the robot's head, a black and red singularity erupted, unleashing a wave of terrifying repulsive force. The Sentinel was destroyed instantly, and the singularity plowed forward, obliterating a dozen more robots before finally dissipating. Silence gripped the command room once more. Stryker stared at the screen, disbelief etched on his face. The white-haired freak had shrugged off the dampener and taken out a dozen Sentinels with a single attack. He began to doubt their chances. Why was the dampener useless? It was specifically designed for him, based on his power profile. The scientists had assured him it would suppress his abilities for hours. But this time? Less than a second, and it did nothing. A wave of dread washed over Stryker, and he desperately tried to reassure himself. It's okay, we still have the spatial attacks. He can't resist those. The Sentinels will finish him. Under his command, the remaining Sentinels unleashed a barrage of spatial attacks. The countless blades of space formed a dense net, trying to trap him and cut off any escape. Facing the incoming assault, Sumu remained calm. This attack, once a serious threat, was now insignificant. The spatial blades were fast, but his upgraded eyes tracked them easily. He could dodge them if he wanted to. Instead, he let most of them pass, then stepped directly into the path of the remaining blades, testing the limits of his upgraded spell. The blades, which had sliced through the level 1 spell with ease, slowed to a crawl upon entering the level 3 version. They couldn't break through. He concluded that a level 4 version would likely grant complete immunity to spatial attacks. Satisfied with his experiment, Sumu extended his index finger towards a space blade. A tiny azure black hole and an equally small black and red singularity merged in front of him, forming an illusion sphere crackling with purple energy. It shot forward, annihilating the blade and continuing on its path, obliterating every sentinel in its way until it vanished into the distance. Chapter 43 The White Devil laughing wildly in the ruins. Please read on. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 43 The White Devil laughing wildly in the ruins. In a blink, the White Devil had trashed most of the Sentinel robots. They couldn't even scratch him. Colonel Stryker's fancy space attack. Total dud. And the rest of their arsenal was just as useless. The White Devil was putting on a clinic, ghosting through the hail of bullets. The Sentinel robots' blades and everything else just couldn't touch him. He was too fast for their targeting systems. Most of their ammo was going to waste. The generals noticed something else too. The White Devil wasn't bothering to dodge or use that weird space defense. He was just shrugging off the attacks. At most, he'd use that purple sphere to zap the space blades. His physicals are off the charts, and he's got another new mutant power, space penetration. If he keeps spamming that purple sphere, he could level a city in minutes. Don't forget his energy absorption. Feed him enough juice, and he probably could. Scrap the White Devil plan. Nukes can't even touch him. He's outgrown us. Agreed. Ditto. Then one of the generals had a thought. Someone shut down the media contacts. If word gets out that this op failed, our credibility is toast. A signalman grimaced. Sir, we already notified them. The general's face went white. For once, he wished his soldiers weren't so efficient. The other generals caught on quick. The media is gonna sniff around New Mexico and figure out our White Devil plan tanked. Pressure the media. Black out the story. No way we can silence everyone. Those journalists are animals. The room went silent. It had gone to hell fast. The generals were regretting ever poking the White Devil. Colonel Stryker, silent, clenched his fists until his nails drew blood. He was screaming one name in his head. White Devil. That he wasn't giving up. And if he was willing to risk it all, they'd back him in the shadows. The Sentinel robots had collected data. He believed they'd eventually figure out the White Devil. Sumu had absorbed everything they threw at him, taking no damage and getting a nice energy boost. He barely had to avoid the space blades. His 6 eyes saw everything, and that virtual style, Z, could destroy the blades. These robots that made most mutants with their pants, were practice dummies for Sumu. Finally, he unleashed the black flash, black and red lightning crackling, and smashed the last robot into scrap. All Sentinel robots, neutralized. He dumped the excess energy into the system, and the character template fusion ticked up to 72%. The jump from 70% to 71% alone costed so much, he could barely imagine how much it would cost to go further. If he was still relying on just siphoning electricity, it would be months before he increased the template fusion by even 1%. He just swallowed almost all the energy from a nuke, and it only went up 6%. Even draining an arc reactor wouldn't make a significant difference, but Sumu wasn't aiming for arc reactors anymore. He was setting his sights on the Infinity Stones, especially the Power Stone. He had to get it. And there were other energy sources out there. Celestial beings, artifacts like the Eternal Flame, those held the power he needed. He wasn't worried about running dry, he also had other ideas. Since his abilities could be upgraded, what if he kept improving the portal? Right now, it only allowed him to teleport to places he'd already been. Ned in the Spider-Man movies could even open portals right next to someone. What would a maxed-out portal look like? Time travel? Dimension hopping? Opening doorways to other worlds? Sumu was hyped. If the Marvel world existed, other worlds could too. If he could level up the portal enough, he could open a gateway to Jujutsu Kaisen, then beating Gojo Satoru with an even stronger move would be unreal. Especially delivering that classic line to his face. I am the only one in the world, that just thinking about it sent chills down his spine. P.S. Your thoughts? Thor and the others approached cautiously. When they reached the edge of the battlefield, they stopped in their tracks, the smoke hung thick in the air. The ground was cratered like a meteor field. Shreds of metal and missile debris littered the sand. In the center, at the end of the scorched path left by the purple sphere, floating a few feet above the ground in the middle of the nuclear blast zone, was the White Devil. He seemed to be reliving the fight or thinking of something hilarious. He had his hand to his forehead, his face to the sky, a smile crawling across his face, slowly spreading into a laugh, then a full-blown, unhinged roar. Chapter 44, The Supreme Mage. Please read on. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 44 Supreme Mage. Thor and the others froze, stopping in their tracks. Sif, one of the Warriors 3, whispered, "That guy's seriously dangerous." Everyone else nodded in agreement. Seeing Thor and his crew, Sumu touched back down to earth. Thor approached, saying, "I gotta head back. Things in Asgard need my attention." Sumu nodded, a smile playing on his lips. "Tell Loki I said hi, and remind him my delivery's overdue." Of course, Sumu knew exactly what Thor was walking into, the Frost Giants' invasion. To keep Loki from wiping out their home, Thor would end up destroying the Bifrost, trapping himself on Asgard, which also meant Loki was about to take a cosmic nosedive, landing right in Thanos' lap. Thanos would hand him the Mind Stone, then teleport him back to Earth where he'd use the Tesseract to open the door for the Chitauri invasion, and that Mind Stone was the very package Sumu had been waiting for. Even though he had no clue what Sumu was talking about, Thor just said, "Will do." He said his goodbyes to Jane Foster, promising to return, and then the Bifrost whisked him and the Warriors 3 away in a blaze of color. As soon as the Rainbow Bridge fizzled out, Sumu called out to Jane Foster, "Don't forget to get yourself checked out." "All right." Then, with a step, he vanished from sight. Next stop, Tony Stark's place. Time to score a new arc reactor, and then deliver a little piece back to the military. They gave him a mushroom cloud. A little payback seemed fair. Leaving New Mexico, Sumu sped towards Tony Stark's Malibu mansion. With his energy leveled up to LV4, he could now teleport continuously without frying his circuits. Plus, reversal technique at level 2 not only supercharged his healing, but it also erased the brain drain from overuse, letting Sumu keep his limitless powers online indefinitely. Better yet, LV3's no lower limit spell was now hazard aware. Anything that wasn't a threat simply passed through, anything that was got instantly rejected. Late afternoon bled into night, and the beachside mansion blazed with light. Tony Stark, billionaire extraordinaire, was throwing a party that was pure sensory overload. Hordes of scantily clad women, barely covered, were flaunting their assets, all vying for the attention of the man of the hour. Lights, beauties, booze, the place was a hormonal hurricane. For any guy, this was paradise. Tony Stark, thoroughly plastered, was holding court on the dance floor. He'd just relieved himself in his Iron Man armor and had a spat with Pepper Potts. Now, he was using the suit's weapons to drink fireworks at the guests. Suddenly, a voice shattered the vibe. Colonel Rhodes, decked out in another Iron Man suit, stomped forward, shouting, "I'm only saying this once, party's over." The music screeched to a halt. The good times evaporated. Everyone stared at Rhodes. Just when Rhodes thought everyone was about to scatter, he felt a chill run down his spine. Were they too freaked out? Like, "I'm about to die" freaked out. But he wasn't going to kill anyone. Then it hit him, they weren't looking at him. They were looking behind him. The icy dread creeping through his veins wasn't from him either. It was from someone behind him. Rhodes knew he was in trouble, but before he could even whirl around, a slender hand clamped down on his shoulder. The power radiating from that hand was unreal. Even encased in Iron Man armor, the sheer force threatened to buckle him. He went down on one knee, barely holding himself up. The concrete beneath him groaned, cracked spiderwebbing outwards. Finally, a voice whispered in his ear, a voice that felt almost demonic. "Colonel Rhodes, why stop the party? You wouldn't want to upset me, would you?" Rhodes froze, his heart pounding. He slowly turned his head. He saw a handsome man with snow-white hair and piercing blue eyes, smiling at him. But that smile was pure, unadulterated malice. From the depths of his soul, Colonel Rhodes blurted out, "I don't think the party should end, either." The white-haired demon's smile widened. He moved forward, walking past Rhodes and stepped up beside Tony Stark and yelled to the beautiful women. "The music is staying on, get back to dancing." Fueled by alcohol and hormones, the women threw caution to the wind and cheered. The music started and the screams got even louder. Energy blasts ripped from the Iron Man armor, alongside miniature black holes and ominous red singularities. Of course, everything was under Sumu's control. Nothing was going to get wrecked. Tonight was a night to remember. When Sumu woke up, the sun was already high. He got dressed, stepped over a dozen naked bodies sprawled across the bed and floor, and headed to the mansion's living room. Even with the reversal technique, a non-stop marathon with a dozen hungry women had taken its toll. He found Tony already there, staring at a holographic display. It showed the New Mexico nuclear explosion and a white-haired figure strolling out of the blast zone. Hearing Sumu approach, Tony spun around, his eyes wide with disbelief. Sumu grinned, "What's with the look?" "My love life is normal." Tony wasn't in the mood for jokes. He looked Sumu in the eye, asking the question that was burning in his mind. "You really walked out of a nuke, unscathed?" Sumu glanced at the projection and shrugged. "Yep. Easy peasy." "Easy? How?" "Tony, don't freak out. I'm not the only one who can do that. You should check out the Sorcerer Supreme. He and she are at Kamartaj, probably." "Sorcerer Supreme? What is that?" Just as Tony was about to press him, a shower of sparks erupted in front of them. A circular portal crackled into existence, and a kind-faced, bald woman stepped through. "Please read, collect, and vote for the monthly ticket." Chapter 45 Sorcerer Supreme Tony Stark. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 45, Tony Stark, Sorcerer Supreme. Seriously? When the bald woman stepped through the portal, Sumu instantly recognized her. Even though she looked different from the movie version, it was the Ancient One, the Sorcerer Supreme. His muscles tensed. Focusing all his energy and mantras, he sharpened his senses. All 6 eyes were working overtime, pushing him to his absolute limit. Facing someone of that caliber, even the current Sumu couldn't afford to slack off. Tony stared at the bald woman, then at the glowing portal behind her. He was starting to feel like his life had turned into a circus since he'd announced he was Iron Man. First, it was the white-haired demon. Then Thor crashed into New Mexico, bringing Asgardian legends with him. And now, a bald woman in yellow robes was popping into his house through a freakin' portal, pretending to grab a bottle of wine. Tony ducked behind Sumu. He poured 2 glasses, handing one to Sumu and keeping the other for himself. "All right," he said to the woman, "who are you? How'd you get that light show going on back there?" mutant power? Tech. Just plain superpowers, that the Ancient One, who'd been locked on Sumu the moment she arrived, finally shifted her gaze to Tony. A knowing smile played on her lips as she replied, "It's magic." "Okay, magic," Tony said, instantly buying it. After Asgard turned out to be real, magic seemed like the next logical step. "So, wizard, what brings you here?" "Actually, the correct term is mystic arts practitioner." The Ancient One corrected him. Then, turning her attention back to Sumu, she said, "I'm here to see this gentleman." Tony downed his wine. "Knew it," he mumbled, throwing his hands up in the air. Seeing the Sorcerer Supreme single him out, Sumu stepped forward, flashing her a smile that was almost too sincere. "Respected Sorcerer Supreme, what can I do for you?" Tony's jaw dropped. That fake, sinister grin of Sumu's, replaced with that. It was unsettling. Then the name hit him, Sorcerer Supreme. Could this bald woman really be the Sorcerer Supreme, the one who could supposedly tank nukes? Between these two, Tony felt like he was trapped in a room of monsters. Maybe, in addition to the white-haired demon armor, the Supreme Sorcerer armor should also be put on the agenda. The Ancient One smiled at Sumu. "I want you to be the next Sorcerer Supreme. I can teach you everything I know, as long as you're willing to protect Earth until the next one comes along." Sumu was taken aback. She wanted him to be the Sorcerer Supreme. Was she trying to retire early? The thought barely formed before he shot it down. "Sorry, I'm not interested in becoming the Sorcerer Supreme." He wasn't about to spend his time protecting Earth, he'd rather use that time to absorb more energy and unlock more character templates, becoming someone far beyond her. The Ancient One wasn't surprised. She'd expected this. It was just a formality. Her real purpose was something else. She produced a strange ring with 2 open slots and sent it floating toward Sumu. "You seem to have the ability to push your abilities to their limits. If you can master the sling ring, you might be able to travel between dimensions that will one day." Sumu looked at the ring, surprised. It was easier than he thought. "What's the catch?" he asked. The Ancient One shook her head. "No catch. But I suggest you visit other realities as soon as possible. The universe is vast, and you should see it." Sumu's lips twitched. Her tone was polite, but the subtext was clear: just leave this universe alone, and go wreak havoc somewhere else, that which suited him just fine. He had so much he wanted to see: the Zerg swarms, the Mad Titan snap, the eventual loss of the universe, the Infinity War, and so on. The real charm of the Marvel world was the endless possibilities of infinite universes. He wasn't about to be stuck in one. Seeing that Sumu had accepted the ring and that she'd accomplished her mission, the Ancient One started to leave, but Sumu stopped her. "Hey, what do you think about Tony as the Sorcerer Supreme? With his brains, he could totally pull it off." Tony, caught off guard, stared. Him, the Sorcerer Supreme? He was speechless, pointing at himself. Sumu shoved Tony in front of the Ancient One. "Don't you think the fusion of technology and magic could create some real fireworks?" Tony considered it. He nodded slowly. He was having a hard time dealing with a terrifying existence like Sumu with the power of technology alone, and it took time to climb the technology tree, so it was difficult to get more powerful power immediately. So at this time, learning from magic and combining it with technology might be a new way out. The Ancient One studied Tony Stark, the genius and playboy. Her eyes were distant, as if she were looking past him into the future. Finally, she smiled. This man could be an excellent Sorcerer Supreme. Sumu grinned. He knew she'd go for it. With Sumu's suggestion, Tony left with the Supreme Sorcerer and went to Kamartaj to learn magic. Sumu was very confident that Tony could learn magic. After all, he was the Supreme Sorcerer in a certain universe, and the Supreme Sorcerer did not reject this proposal, which also meant that Tony should be very talented. Backpack slung over his shoulder, Sumu flew toward Washington. 10 arc reactors were inside, enough juice to keep him going for a while. By the time they ran out, he'd probably have his hands on the Infinity Stones anyway. With level 4 energy absorption, Sumu was cruising at over Mach 10. Washington was only a 10-minute hop from Black Coast, California, his destination, the White House, time to return the favor to the military, but as he approached, he realized the White House was already in complete chaos. Please read and collect it. Chapter 46 The Lingering Blood. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In front of the White House, two opposing groups faced off, banners raised to broadcast their messages. One side chanted, "Incompetent politicians, wasting our tax dollars. The White Devil elimination plan must be reinstated. The White Devil is humanity's greatest threat. Down with the Mutant Liberation Treaty," that the other group countered with, "Free the mutants. Mutants are people too. Part of the human race. Pointless sacrifices won't work. We can't beat the White Devil. The White Devil can survive nukes now. He'll only get stronger. He's an angel, a living god sent to Earth. Targeting the White Devil is a one-way ticket to oblivion." Sumu noticed something strange. Most of the pro-mutant treaty supporters had white hair and wore the same white coat he'd been sporting when the media first hounded him. Several lookalikes were in the crowd, sporting similar haircuts, heights, builds, and even bright blue contact lenses. If his 6 eyes hadn't picked up on subtle differences, Sumu might have thought some organization had cloned him. Scanning with 6 eyes, he detected numerous mutants among the pro-treaty crowd. His energy vision even picked out Mystique disguised as one of his clones, plus other X-Men lurking around the edges. What was going on? Wasn't Mystique part of Magneto's Brotherhood of Mutants? Why'd she join the X-Men all of a sudden? Did Professor X get to her again? The more Sumu considered it, the more it made sense. Mystique didn't hate humans like Magneto, she was just disillusioned and distrustful, which drove her to the Brotherhood. The government probably feared his retaliation and wanted to push this treaty, so they pulled Mystique back into the X-Men. But who were these imitators? He didn't think his public image was all that great, yet he had so many fans here. He approached a woman cosplaying as the White Devil and asked, "Why are you dressed like the White Devil and supporting the Mutant Liberation Treaty?" The girl turned, her eyes widening. The guy in front of her was the spitting image of the White Devil. He even had the same vibe. The thought of him being the White Devil never crossed her mind. Because Sumu was so handsome, she answered despite his odd question, "Because the White Devil is hot, duh." Her friends overheard and noticed Sumu, their faces lit up, and they swarmed him. They'd heard his question, and they answered while shamelessly rubbing against him. "The White Devil is so dreamy." "Totally. He's so cool." Sumu cringed. This was beyond fanatical. He calmly used his technique to push back the admirers who were trying to get handsy, and repeated, "Is there any other reason?" A young guy with acne, clearly jealous of the attention Sumu was getting, chimed in, "Of course there is. Now that the White Devil can survive a nuke, there's no way to stop him. He's going to rule the world. And when he does, he'll wipe out everyone who ever opposed him. We're backing him now so we don't get purged." Sumu was speechless. He had no intention of ruling the world, he had better things to do. But he just smiled and nodded before walking away. He ignored the girl's requests for his number, parting the crowd and heading for the White House entrance. As he moved, the girls fell silent, and the surrounding arguments faded. In seconds, the noise evaporated. His technique activated, shoving aside the dense crowd, creating a protective bubble around him. Some of those pushed away started to protest, but the terrifying force sent them flying, bowling over innocent bystanders. More and more people noticed the unusual white-haired man. His location shifted from the periphery to the center of attention, drawing every eye. The girls who had been chatting with Sumu trembled, unsure if they were excited or scared. The girl he had questioned was in shock, mumbling, "He really is the White Devil. He's really him." At the junction of the two groups, the organization leaders stopped arguing, whether they supported the White Devil to avoid the coming purge or opposed the treaty and wanted to eliminate him. They didn't dare speak. Like a dragon only feared when seen. When the White Devil wasn't there, they argued freely, but face to face, their courage vanished, terrified of drawing his attention. One opponent leader even wet himself, a dark stain spreading on his pants, but the White Devil ignored them, walking to the White House, facing the armed soldiers and dozens of Sentinel robots, he floated into the air, standing in the void, and laughed derisively, looking down at everything below, looking down at the political heart of the country, looking down at his supporters and his enemies. He opened his mouth to speak but then touched his forehead, smiling apologetically. "Sorry, 1 second. Almost forgot something." He vanished and reappeared in front of the leader of the opposition. Then, before everyone's eyes, as the X-Men rushed to stop him, he reached out a hand in front of the trembling man. The force erupted, destroying everything ahead. First, the opposition leader disintegrated into dust, then everything behind him, all the dissenting voices, all the opposition, slowly disappeared in a red mist. As Sumu had said to Professor X, differing opinions only existed when strength wasn't enough. Afterward, Sumu used his power to scatter the floating blood, painting the area red, splattering the faces of his supporters and the arriving X-Men, ignoring the screams of terror and the X-Men's questions, ignoring the lingering blood. He returned to his original spot, floating in the air, and grinned against the hellish backdrop. "Sorry for the wait, Mr. President, P.S. What do you think about going to DC? Please read and collect. And what do you think about going to DC? Chapter 47 I Give You Face. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Under that horrifying blast, the bodies were vaporized, leaving nothing but a bloody mist hanging over the White House. The pungent, metallic scent lingered, refusing to dissipate. Onlookers screamed, some collapsing in terror. Against this backdrop, the White Devil floated in the air, ignoring the soldiers below, and announced to the president inside the White House. "I'm here." Soldiers stood in formation, their eyes fixed on the godlike figure before them. Though armed to the teeth, they felt utterly helpless, knowing they were outmatched. The devastating blast that had wiped out everything, along with the devil's past feats, proved he was invincible. Some soldiers trembled. Battlefield veterans who'd seen hell itself, they'd never witnessed anything like this. The White Devil loomed in the bloody mist, the breeze carrying a thick, malicious stench, threatening to overwhelm them. If this went on, even these disciplined soldiers would likely break. They were human, and they feared death, especially against an unbeatable foe in a hopeless battle. Inside the White House, the president knew the White Devil had arrived. This was payback for the military's attack. Damn it! What do I do? Escape was pointless. Intelligence said the White Devil was faster than Mach 10, with long-range attacks and incredible senses. The moment he appeared, the president was a target. Running would only guarantee his death. Then an idea struck. He turned to his terrified assistant. "Get me the X-Men. Tell them to stop the White Devil, or I swear the Mutant Liberation Treaty will never see the light of day." Even without the president's warning, the X-Men wouldn't stand by and watch, but they were too late. Black lightning flashed, blood splattered, and the area transformed into a hellscape. Professor X witnessed the scene and felt his heart sink. The White Devil just killed hundreds of civilians. This sets everything back. The Mutant Liberation Treaty could be dead. Seeing the White Devil taunting the White House, the president, the government itself, Professor X realized. We can't let him kill the president, or the gap between mutants and humans will never close. The X-Men rushed toward the White Devil. Storm took to the air. "Why are you doing this? Can't you see how this will worsen relations between humans and mutants?" The White Devil ignored her. Cyclops arrived. "Why? You're a mutant, too. Why sabotage the treaty?" The White Devil ignored him. Mystique stepped forward, reverting to her true form. "You've ruined years of work. You've doomed the future of mutants. This is unforgivable." Still, the White Devil didn't respond, just stared ahead, indifferent to their anger, uncaring about the future, standing high in the sky. Cyclops, his patience gone, ripped off his visor, unleashing blasts of raw energy from his eyes. Storms summoned winds and lightning. The sky darkened, and bolts crashed down on the White Devil. Yet the White Devil didn't react, letting the attacks hit him. Cyclops was elated. The White Devil was so arrogant, he was ignoring their attacks. Their slim chance of winning just increased. Against all odds, they had a shot. He boosted the laser's power, trying to inflict serious damage. Storm did the same, but Professor X, watching from afar, grew more concerned. He remembered the White Devil's ability to grow stronger, his mutant abilities mirroring a past enemy. No. The lasers and lightning struck the White Devil. To everyone's shock, he remained unharmed. The attacks weakened as they neared, then vanished into his body. He absorbed the energy. Professor X's fears were confirmed. The mutant ability absorbed and transformed the energy. The White Devil evolved to the level of the Black King, maybe even surpassed the Black King. Sumu ignored the attacks. He might as well get some use of this small charge. He stepped forward, and a wave of repulsive force surged outward, hitting the lawn, the fountain, the pavement, the soil, the soldiers. A deafening roar ripped through the air as dust, grass, and blood swirled into the wind. No, that Cyclops was beside himself. Overwhelmed, his powers flared, but the thicker laser only fed the White Devil, unable to hurt him. The X-Men, powerless, faced the White Devil. The difference was absolute. Suddenly, Sumu sensed a surge of powerful energy behind him, both destructive and life-giving. Broken, but magnificent. It bypassed his energy absorption and directly broke down his body. Though slow, and no real threat, it piqued his interest. He turned to face the Phoenix, her eyes glowing red, and smiled. I acknowledge you. Chapter 48, Shinra Heavenly Expedition. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Professor X's face was grim as he surveyed the scene. Even Cyclops and Storm's attacks were useless against the White Devil, they only seemed to make him stronger. Only one person could stop him now. Projecting his thoughts, Professor X reached Jean Grey, saying, Jean, unleash your power. Don't be afraid. Use the Phoenix to defeat him. Jean's eyes glowed red as she levitated. The Phoenix Force, a primal energy capable of unraveling anything, surged within her. A fire, representing life and raw emotion, engulfed her. Everything around her began to dissolve. The Phoenix Force was breaking down matter itself. Even the seemingly invincible White Devil wasn't immune. His body started to disintegrate. For the first time, the White Devil couldn't ignore what was happening. He turned to face Jean. Seeing this, the X-Men felt a surge of hope. Just like Apocalypse before him, the White Devil was about to be reduced to ashes. Sumu watched as Jean Grey's Phoenix powers awakened. His level 4 energy absorption clearly wasn't enough to counter the Phoenix Force's ability to break down matter. His body was dissolving faster and faster, but Sumu wasn't worried. He grinned at Jean and pointed a finger at her. In an instant, a terrifying black and red singularity formed and hurtled toward her. It tore through everything in its path, an unstoppable force. Faced with such power, Jean had to abandon her attack on Sumu. She focused all her energy on stopping the singularity. The black and red mass, like a miniature supernova, began to dissipate before it reached her. The X-Men's hopes soared, but their smiles vanished the next instant. The White Devil had vanished. In the blink of an eye, he was in front of Jean, delivering a devastating punch. Boom! Black and red lightning exploded between them as the Phoenix Force's telekinesis clashed with the dark energy. The ground shattered, the aftershock creating a massive crater. Even Professor X felt the impact. Quicksilver sped in, carrying everyone to safety. He set down his goggles, looked at the two fighters, and exclaimed, "Holy crap!" Sumu wasn't surprised his initial attack was stopped. It was the Phoenix Force. After all, he only used the Black Flash to enter the zone, maximizing his energy, spell power, and physical coordination to 120% of their normal levels. He unleashed another, amplified blast. This time, it was too much for Jean's partially awakened powers. The telekinetic shield shattered like glass. Sumu shifted his fist to an open palm, creating a new, even more potent singularity. Like a supernova in miniature, it overwhelmed the broken shield and rushed toward Jean. She was too close to fully counter it. Just then, Wolverine, using Cyclops' optic blast and Storm's wind as boosters, shot forward to shield Jean. Even with his adamantium skeleton, he couldn't withstand the partially dissipated singularity. It slammed into him, sending him crashing into Jean. The sound of breaking bones echoed as they smashed through buildings and disappeared into the ruins. No! Cyclops roared. How had victory turned into such a disaster so quickly? Even with Wolverine as a shield, Jean, in her mortal form, couldn't have survived that attack. He unleashed the most powerful optic blast he could muster, but it was useless. The White Devil simply absorbed the energy. Sumu, seeing the remaining X-Men, grinned. He extended his palm, channeling a move from an anime he once loved. Shinra Tensei, that he overloaded the technique again, adding black and red lightning caused by the unstable energy. An unprecedented, terrifying repulsive force exploded outwards from him. Everything disintegrated. In a heartbeat, the area within thousands of yards was reduced to rubble. Even Sumu felt the strain. The energy drain was immense. 5 arc reactors floated out of his backpack, feeding him power. Ignoring the likely dead or incapacitated X-Men, Sumu headed towards his goal. He casually destroyed dozens of Sentinel robots and, hands in his pockets, casually strolled towards the White House. He sensed surveillance eyes on him more than once. He smiled brightly at the familiar location of the spy satellites, then continued on. The White House was a wreck. The poor president was pinned under rubble. Seeing Sumu, the president panicked and begged, "Please, don't kill me. I couldn't stop the plan to attack you." Sumu didn't answer. He approached the trapped president, looked down at him, and asked, "Tell me where the other senior military officials are." The president immediately understood his purpose. "I don't know. After you walked away from the nuclear blast, they went into hiding. Even I don't know where they are." TSK, disappointing. Sumu continued, "You know what they look like, right? Any information besides their location?" "I do. Desperate for any chance of survival, the president rattled off everything he knew about the generals. Sumu absorbed the information. Seeing the White Devil smile, the president gathered his courage and asked, "Can you let me go?" Sumu didn't answer. He just smiled, then turned and vanished into the ruined White House. The president sighed in relief. "Finally, I survived." But before he could finish, a terrifying purple sphere of energy, crackling with lightning, fell from the sky. In an instant, the White House was gone, leaving only a bottomless crater. Chapter 49, The plan against the White Devil is restarted, and the Phoenix Girl masters the power of. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The purple illusion sphere tore through space, obliterating the White House. The political heart of the United States, a national symbol, historic building centuries old, vanished in an instant, leaving only a bottomless crater. Top military brass got the news immediately. From their hidden base, they watched satellite footage of the whole thing, from the moment the White Devil appeared, to the horrifying crimson energy saturating the White House, to the clash with the X-Men, the devastating aftershocks of the battle, and the repulsion field that vaporized everything within 1,000 yards. Finally, the White Devil flipped off the sky, casually scrapped dozens of Sentinel robots, strolled into the White House, iced the president, and then vaporized the White House with that insane purple sphere. They were furious, a slap in the face to the entire nation. But fear outweighed anger. The White Devil had shrugged off a nuke. They were out of options. Worse, the White Devil was out for revenge, and thanks to that deadbeat president, he now had their intel. Given his recon skills, it was only a matter of time before he hunted them down. We have to restart the White Devil contingency plan. It's a fight to the death, and he won't back down. One general said during the emergency meeting, his voice tight with terror. Another general, equally shaken, kept replaying the White House destruction. He remembered the satellite camera, perched miles above, yet he felt like the White Devil was looking directly at him, rattling him to his core. We need to fully back Stryker's research. He knows mutants inside and out, especially the Sentinel program with its adaptive tech. There's huge potential there. It's our best shot at going toe-to-toe with the White Devil. But the last fight proved the Sentinels are no match for him. Another general said glumly. The general advocating for Stryker shot back, those were just prototypes. The final Sentinel design is all about copying mutant powers, storing them, and then sharing them across the network. They can then mix and match abilities to specifically counter any mutant, that the others remain skeptical. The White Devil's way beyond just numbers. His powers are too versatile. He's got range, close combat, offense, defense, he's maxed out every skill tree. Even if the Sentinels steal every mutant power on Earth, they still couldn't touch him. One repulsion blast and they're scrap metal. Not so. The General countered. The Sentinel program has one final ace, the ability to amplify mutant powers. If we can boost spatial attacks past the limit, we can crack the White Devil's defenses. If we can enhance Steel Skin beyond anything imaginable, his attacks won't even scratch us. And we found someone with a unique ability, he can nullify mutant powers in a radius around him. It doesn't work on the White Devil now, but if we amplify it, it will. That's just a pipe dream. We don't have the tech to do that, another general argued. The general supporting striker smirked. He clapped his hands, and two figures entered the room. One was covered in tattoos, a low-level thug. The other was bizarre, with green skin and a head 3 times the size of normal. Several generals recognized the first man, Ivan Vanko, the terrorist who attacked Tony Stark at the racetrack. The other was a mystery. Seeing their questioning glances, the general supporting striker said confidently. Trust me. Dr. Sten and Vanko won't let you down. Outside, Stryker ordered the mastermind to release his control over the generals. He grinned. White Devil, you're in for a surprise. In a hidden lab beneath Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters, Jean Grey was using the nascent Phoenix Force to heal Cyclops. In the fight with the White Devil, she was easily defeated. Blasted by that twisted black hole, she was about to die when she unlocked a sliver of the Phoenix Force and barely clung to life. Quicksilver had rescued them, but even with his speed, they'd taken heavy damage. Only Wolverine, with his healing factor and adamantium skeleton, was unscathed. Everyone else was seriously wounded. Cyclops' body was nearly destroyed by the repulsion force. Jean had to use the Phoenix Force to immediately repair the damage. Others had lost limbs, but they were quickly regenerated under the Phoenix Force's influence. Professor X's legs were rebuilt using matter manipulation. The X-Men were alive, but there was no joy. The entire lab was heavy with grief. The White Devil was a dark cloud looming over the X-Men, suffocating them. Cyclops slammed his fist into the wall, leaving a bloody smear on the white paint. Shockwave is dead. Darwin is dead. Countless civilians are dead. The Mutant Liberation Act is dead. Everything we fought for, it's all a joke. We have to kill him. We have to. Not even Professor X didn't try to dissuade them. They were consumed by hatred. The White Devil wasn't just their enemy, he was a roadblock to peace between humans and mutants, but silence fell. How could they kill him? All eyes turned to Jean Grey. She was wielding a sliver of the Phoenix Force. The possibility of fully harnessing it, maybe even finding more fragments, was their only hope. Chapter 50 Unlimited Technique Level 4. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Thousands of feet above the Earth, inside a massive aircraft carrier, Nick Fury stared intensely at the satellite image displayed before him. Beside him, Coulson reported on the white-haired demon's rampage. He started by wiping out hundreds of opponents, then mowed down dozens of soldiers, and in the end, he took out tens of thousands of civilians during that fight with the X-Men, capping it all off by demolishing the White House. Fury's response was immediate: the white-haired demon is not Avenger material. Scrap all previous plans. He's a loose cannon, a law unto himself. Right now, he's the biggest threat Earth's ever faced. Coulson, already aware of the problem, knew S.H.I.E.L.D. had no way to contain him. Just as Fury reached for his pager to contact Captain Marvel, Coulson spoke up: what about the Eternals? Aren't they supposed to be protecting humanity? Before, maybe they'd stand back, but now this guy is racking up a body count in the thousands. They can't just sit by and watch. We could sick them on him. S.H.I.E.L.D.'s database contained information on the Eternals. Fury himself was wary of these superpowered beings. He suspected they had ulterior motives, beyond simply protecting humanity, but if the Eternals and the white-haired demon went head-to-head, it would be a win-win. Fury, impressed, turned to Coulson. Find a way to get the Eternals in the loop, he instructed. Make sure they hear about the white-haired demon's little escapades. Get them riled up enough to take him on. Meanwhile, in another office aboard the carrier, Alexander Pierce watched the demon's destructive power, a gleam in his eye. He saw opportunity. Hydra and the unhinged white-haired demon. A match made in hell, he initiated a secret communication channel, hoping to recruit him. Having turned the White House into a crater, Sumu moved into Tony Stark's luxurious beachfront pad and resumed his training. He knew he'd burned his bridges with S.H.I.E.L.D. Accessing the Tesseract's location by force was off the table for now. He'd just have to sit tight and wait for Loki to deliver the package. Tony was off learning magic from the Ancient One, so the villa was empty. Sumu figured, why not squat? He kept himself busy, continuously siphoning power from the arc reactors while practicing the unlimited spell, trying to master portal creation. Magic wasn't exactly his strong suit, not like it was for Doctor Strange. Even with his 6 eyes and energy absorption, portals remained elusive. Still, he was getting there. He could conjure sparks now, which meant he was on the verge of cracking it. He focused on the unlimited spell because he discovered its advanced levels could manipulate space, even create pocket dimensions. Sumu was currently lugging around 10 arc reactors in a backpack. A pocket dimension would be a lifesaver, not just for convenience, but for style. A cool, elegant white-haired demon shouldn't be schlepping a backpack. It ruined the look. He activated the unlimited technique, sending the 5 arc reactors orbiting around him as the system chimed. Energy point +1. Energy point +1. Energy point +1. Unlimited technique experience +1. Unlimited technique experience +1. Unlimited technique experience +1. Finally, after relentless practice, a different notification. Unlimited technique experience +1. Congratulations. Your skill, unlimited technique, has leveled up. Unlimited technique LV4, 3/5000 interfere with atomic level matter, dominate space. Objects slow down the closer they are, unable to touch the user. Partial control over space. A flood of memories surged into his mind. Amplified by his 6 eyes, Sumu absorbed them, processing everything. He then used the reversal technique to repair the damage from the mental overload. A moment later, he grasped the unlimited technique's new capabilities. The system's description had been updated. The phrase partial control over space had been added. As for the skill's performance, first, the range had expanded from 50 centimeters to roughly 5 meters, a 10-fold increase. Second, the unlimited technique offered more absolute control over space. Within that 5-meter radius, Sumu could manipulate space in a variety of ways: instant teleportation, space creation, spatial blades, space folding, the works. His unlimited technique had surpassed Gojo Satoru, reaching a whole new level. After processing the memories, Sumu immediately used the unlimited technique to create a pocket dimension and stashed all 10 arc reactors inside. Since he had created the pocket dimension, he could still draw energy from the reactors within. Plus, there was another bonus. The upgrade to the unlimited technique had deepened his understanding of space. The portal magic that had confounded him before now seemed crystal clear. He felt he'd finally mastered it. Without hesitation, Sumu slipped on the sling ring and waved his fingers. Sparks flew, and a stable portal materialized before him. Simultaneously, a new skill appeared on his system panel. Portal LV1, 1/100 consume magic or energy to open a portal to any location you visited. Finally, after mastering the portal, the system had incorporated the skill, allowing Sumu to level it up, increasing its potential. LV1, visit anywhere you've been. LV2, open portals unaided, without the sling ring. LV3, travel anywhere within the current dimension/universe. LV4, jump to other dimensions. Level 5 or higher might even allow him to pierce the veil between worlds. Sumu was eager to see where this led, fighting Superman, taking on Sun Wukong, showing off to the Homelander, blowing Gojo Satoru's mind with the unlimited spell. Countless incredible worlds awaited him. Suddenly, his 6 eyes picked up movement. Several black-suited agents were approaching the beach house. Sumu smiled. Time for some more fun. Please read and collect.